Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Bob Neagle, President and CEO of Finova Capital. Thanks for joining me, Bob.
Oh, happy to do it, Jesse. Happy to do it.
No, and especially on a Friday afternoon. What's interesting is prior to me hitting recording, I think it might actually be warmer in Jersey than it is out here in Arizona right now, but we are 3 hours behind you. So give it time.
There you go. Yeah. And when you're in a startup, you work Friday afternoon. So
Friday afternoons and Friday evenings. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the one thing I can say regarding like my first official sales job in equipment finance was in Englewood, New Jersey. So expectations 8 to 5. If you showed up at 7:45, are you working a half day? God forbid you leave at 5:30. Oh, working a half day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't do any half days anymore. So.
But as someone who's had the North, basically the whole US as a sales territory my entire career, you appreciate that Northeast mentality because it's like, why is it 10 o'clock and you're not at your desk?
Yeah. Well, you can see, I don't know if you can see behind me, you can see the front page of the Chicago Tribune, the Cubs winning the World Series. So I'm from the Midwest. And when I moved out to the East Coast, because my wife was from out here, I met her in college in Chicago. The people that I worked with early in my career, when I was leaving, gave me a poster. You've probably seen the poster from the New Yorker of New York City, and there's only New York City and the rest of the world is shrunk to small size. They gave me one of Chicago. It took me years to explain to people here that there's a whole lot of life west of the Hudson River, even though you don't think so. So.
And even if you explain that to them, they don't care.
That's true of some of them. So.
Well, once again, I appreciate your time this afternoon, sir. Do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date in equipment finance,
sure.
Bob?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I'm Bob Neagle, and I'm President, CEO, and founder of Spinova Capital. We launched just about a year ago, so our year anniversary is this month. I got started in the business back in the early 80s. I went to work for an insurance company that owned Tricontinental Leasing. Most people today probably don't know about Tricontinental Leasing, but if you go to the list of Hall of Famers in the ELFA, you'll see Bob Stubbs, who was the founder and president and CEO of Tricontinental Leasing. So that's where I got my start, in the insurance company that owned it. And Bob was a really generous and incredible leader. And even though I had a very low-level, entry-level job at the company at the time, I knew Bob by reputation. And I was somewhat of a writer in those days. I went to the accounting department, looked up the New York ad agency that was doing our company newsletter. I wrote a couple sample articles, and I sent Bob Stubbs a note saying, Bob, you're paying this New York firm $10,000 a year to do this. I'll do it for $5,000. And Bob came down to meet me and said, this is great, but what if I just make it part of your job? And I said, well, that wouldn't be very nice. And so that's how I met Bob. And Bob, I think, liked that I had a kind of can-do attitude. Bob bought the company from the insurance company and sold it to what was at the time Bell Atlantic. So in 1984, the AT&T had to divest the local regional Bell companies. Some people in your audience are old enough to remember that, the biggest breakup in American business history. And Bell Atlantic wanted to continue to offer phones on a dollars per month basis. So Bob Stubbs bought the leasing company from the insurance company, sold it to Bell Atlantic, and overnight became the largest single shareholder in Bell Atlantic. And I got my first break because I used to be a teacher. I taught at the college level early in my career. They needed a teacher to train 600 salespeople in 2 weeks on how to sell leasing. And I put together the training program and delivered it, and found out all these sales guys from Bell Atlantic in the back of the room were making all the money. And I was the one doing all the work. So I asked for one of those jobs. And before you knew it, I was in sales, then sales management, and I ran a line of business, and then went to AT&T Capital and First Data, and now where I am today. So long history doing many asset types, many structures, franchise lending at AT&T Capital, construction lending, real estate, small ticket stuff, et cetera. So a long career doing a lot of different asset types.
So captives, banks, independents.
No banks, but
No
captives.
banks.
And then,
Right.
well, AT&T, yeah, AT&T wasn't a bank, but captives and independents. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Well, at least the gentleman was nice enough to not say, okay, well, now you're going to sell and teach.
Yeah. Oh no, Bob was incredible. When I think of the culture that I want to have in the company that I'm building with my colleagues, it's a place where leadership really cares about people, and he sincerely cared about every person, regardless of the job they had. Everyone was equal when it came to how they were treated by him, and that's a pretty remarkable trait to have in a business. And it's a trait that if you are around it, you're motivated to copy it because you see the impact. But it has to be sincere. It's not something you can just decide to do and not really mean. And he happened to have the personality and the attributes that made it real for everyone who worked for him.
No,
So.
absolutely. And thank you for sharing your background there, Bob. So Finova, congratulations on your year anniversary. I can't believe it's been a year already. Do you mind just kind of introducing your organization and
Sure.
some of the employees you have there?
Yeah. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. As part of my history in the industry, I ended up being recruited to First Data, and during the process of the recruitment, I'm talking to the global credit officer, and he's explaining to me what they do there and what the business was about. And I said, "What, you lease point of sale equipment, average transaction $2,000 to startup and retail credits?" I go, "That's what everybody else avoids." But in a captive environment where they had 6 million customers. Today the company's called Fiserv. It eventually merged with First Data merged with Fiserv a couple of years ago. But we wrote 10,000 leases a month, and we launched a lending program, a merchant cash advance program to that client base. And it's a really neat business. It has reasonable margins. In the captive environment, it was pretty easy to generate the 10,000 contracts a month. And when I left First Data after they went public, they got purchased by KKR and then went public. So after the public offering, I left and got recruited to Ascentium to start the business again, now in a non-captive environment. So a little bit more challenging, but not so much so. But what I saw there was the ability to do transactions that were completely paperless and digital. And everyone talks about that. And I'm talking 2006 and 7. And we were doing it because First Data was a technology company. So they weren't in the equipment financing business. They were in the payment space. And every time you swipe a card, a lot happens. Cash is moved, authorizations are moved in seconds. And so to integrate our financing business inside of that environment was really simple for us. And I used to think, gee, if I ever had a business that was outside of this, you could replicate this workflow and really create a great customer experience because it's so low touch. And so that's really where Finova came about. After leaving Ascentium, it was, do I want to keep working or not? I talked to a bunch of people about starting up a business again, found a great investor out in California. And this was the chance to do what I always thought was possible at other firms, but was never executable because of all kinds of reasons in existing companies. So, imagine no legacy systems to worry about that, where you can't do this or that. No policies and procedures written for a business other than the one that you're in. No large corporate structure that wants to review and opine on every single thing you do. And maybe eventually agree to do it, but maybe it's 3 or 4 or 5 months later. That we're as nimble can be. And so what we wanted to do was say, we can build a workflow for our referral partners who refer point of sale equipment leasing to us But what if we use the same workflow to provide working capital, term lending, merchant cash advances, and do it in a way that other people in the market aren't doing? And that was really the vision of the business. And we've been able to execute on that by building out our own platforms. And so today we're a team of about 15 people, with Rex out for a few more after the first year anniversary where things are stable and systems are go. It's now time to accelerate our growth. So that's kind of where we stand today. We're a hybrid place. We have a corporate location in northern New Jersey, but we have employees in Florida and Texas, and we'll continue with that model as we go forward.
Now, do you allow your Jersey employees to have a hybrid, or are the expectations in the office?
Well, it's an interesting question because, when you're the leader and you don't show up every day, people want the same rights you have. So we are formalizing a hybrid strategy, which I'm going on vacation on Monday. When I come back, we're going to meet with the team and formalize that, just so everybody has the opportunity to have some flexibility. I must admit, I'm kind of old school and so have been somewhat resistant to that. But I recognize it's the way of the world right now, and plenty of people performed at really high levels of production during COVID. And so it's clearly doable. If you get the right people, you have the right culture, everybody's on the right team, pulling in the same direction, everybody has the same goals, you should be able to do that without any problem. So
that's a great approach. And that's a refreshing approach, Bob. So
yeah,
kudos to you because that's the whole thing. But I also understand in Jersey, the reason that I moved from the Bronx to Hackensack, it was only a 3-mile or 4-mile commute, but it could take an hour.
Sure.
It's like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
The stress of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Though I must admit, I still like being in the office. And I think, I gave you a little bit of my history. If I hadn't been in the office, 25 years ago, I would have never been seen and have someone say, hey, that guy over there seems like a hustler. Let's give him an opportunity. And I think that's the advantage to being in the office. I'm not sure how you do that when you're remote. I'm sure it's possible. But I can say I think I got breaks in my career because I was visible. And I saw people that I wanted to know and emulate and have relationships with, and I worked it. And I think that might be harder, when you're not in the office.
No, I 100% understand. If you sit there, and even if, like, from a sales perspective, right, if you're not hitting your numbers, but you're putting in the time, eventually the numbers will happen. If
Sure.
You're not seeing that in real time as a boss, maybe you're going to let someone go sooner than later. So
yeah. But one of the things I learned, and I've learned from the best people I've worked with, is that my job's to make people successful. And if that means that I have to adapt because most of the world operates differently than me, then I should learn to do that, because I still have the same job, which is make everybody on the team successful, like people did for me. I look back at promotions I got, and I'd go home. So I remember going home once to my wife saying, hey, they just gave me this big promotion. I can't believe I got it. And the reason I couldn't believe I got it is because if you wanted someone who had 100% of the requirements of the job, it wasn't me. You could have gone out to the market and found that person. But the culture of the company I worked for at the time, and that's the company Bob ran, was that we give our employees breaks. And when they only have 75% of what's required, we supplement with the other 25. And so I always had a mentor or a couple that looked out for me. And when they saw I was about to stumble, I got rescued, and I never stumbled. And so that's where I come from, and that's what I'm trying to create here at Finova with people who are like-minded.
That's fantastic. And like I said, I think the word is just kind of refreshing from a leadership perspective, because unfortunately, there's not a lot of the case where there's leaders like you that handle things that way. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing as well. So let me talk a little bit about what right does a leader have to be inspired by the people they work with. So my sons are Marines. One of them is out, and the other one is a lieutenant colonel. And when one of them, I can't remember which one or what the event was, they were graduating from a program down at Quantico. And a colonel in the Marine Corps got up in front of, 300 or 400 parents and friends of people who were graduating. It might have been from the basic school, which is a 6-month training program. And he said, you folks probably wonder what we do here. Well, we make leaders who inspire me. And that has stuck with me because I think a CEO has the right to expect that they can show up at work and be inspired by the people who are on the team as well. It's not just, do I have an obligation to inspire some people? Yes. But is it right for me to think that I could be inspired by the people I work with too? And I think the answer is yes. And so, to show up every day and have anybody on the team demonstrate a high level of excitement or enthusiasm for what they're doing or what we're trying to do, whether that's just working hard or making suggestions about how to improve something. I really want to work with people. So when I show up, I'm inspired. I've been doing this long enough that I probably need it more than somebody who's, 45. And so employees can inspire leaders to be the kind of leaders that they want also.
No, it's a great concept, and it makes sense,
Yeah.
because otherwise, like, those days that are rough, right? No day's going to be great. You have something else that can help lift you up too.
Yeah, sure. Well, that makes it fun too, because now we're all engaged in the same thing, showing up to inspire each other, not everybody looking for 1 or 2 people to do all. Nobody's that good, that smart or that good to carry the load for a team. It's nice if everybody plays a part.
Nope, same page there. So from starting up a new organization, obviously there wasn't the legacy systems or a lot of the red tape. What are the challenges, if any, that you might have faced in starting an organization, Bob?
Well, there's a lot. So I showed up with an idea and a marketing plan and a strategic plan, and now I needed people to do it. Everybody can't work in a startup environment. Fortunately, I've worked with people over my 30 years that have done that with me. At First Data, the business that I led there was very, very small when I came. I hired some folks from the industry. We grew it to 20 times its size over the 11 years that I was there, and we took it international. We were working in Europe, South Africa, Canada, Mexico. And so these were people that knew how to grow a business. Now, when they joined me here, the difference was we weren't inside of a large company that had a legal department, an HR department, a treasury department. And you very quickly, you grow to appreciate what those people do, because, just looking at a benefits program, we want to attract good people. Well, you have to have a benefits program. And the benefits consultant you hire shows you, like 9,000 different options, and it, makes your head spin. And you can't spend that much time doing the comparison at all. You just got to get a market competitive plan and go. And so that was true with every single thing we did, from forming the company to buying benefits to getting office space, producing documents. Fortunately, COVID really helped us out, because the building that I was in previously had a tenant who most of his employees went remote. So we had all this space. So we're subleasing space and, doing it at probably 50% of the market rate. And my landlord's happy, and we're very happy to have a lower cost of space. But there's just so much to do, and you realize and appreciate the work that people have done. We got a senior debt facility. That's a ton of work. Get a backup servicer, get a verification service, buy insurance programs. So I don't think I thought about how much of our time that was going to eat up. We were pretty solid on the market we were going after, the customers we were going to target, and we had relationships with them from previous roles. And we have a better product offering today than I ever had at First Data or Centium. So we can really strike, hit the market and take the niche that we want. And it really boils down to, we're doing custom programs for the select clients that we want. Our competition does all kinds of generic, commoditized financing, and we're willing to structure around where we think the market's going, and we're having great success with that. So
that makes I mean that makes complete sense, because this is a niche industry, right? And as much as you want people to fall in general terms from a ease of use, or it's not
sure.
really not really equipment finance.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I could do that, and all I'll be doing is competing on price with a bunch of other people. And when you go and you do custom work, and you know, you're going to have a leg up. And because we've been doing this, me and the team, for 15 years, I mean, we've seen, you know, we've been through cycles. We see where the markets are going. And, you know, this whole concept of embedded financing, we embed ourselves into the tools and workflow of, excuse me,
Okay.
the tools and workflow of our clients, so that they're able to offer their clients financing options before anybody in the larger market ever is able to do it. And no one in the larger market will ever be able to compete with an embedded offering that is, you know, that exists inside the tools and communications and processes that these people use with their current payments partners. So it's really a nice little niche we've carved out for ourselves. I expect that over time we will move outside of it to other markets that might be like it. But for now, there's plenty of business for us to do and grow. But we have our eye on, you know, the need for some other things to really get the scale that we're interested in.
So 15 people, 12 months in.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself 12 months from now and 60 months from now?
Yeah, well, you know, the beauty of this, Jesse, is because it's so technology driven, you scale without adding people. When I was at First Data, we had, I think we had about 200 people.
Okay.
And I think I could do that same business today with maybe 60, 75. It's really the customer service and collections, because, you know, you're originating in this embedded environment, you're auto scoring, you're ACHing, you have portals for reporting. You know, you need just people to answer the phone or make a phone call if someone's lapsed in their payment. So, so I'd say maybe in a couple of years we might be up to 40 people, and it also depends on if we go after some other markets. But it'll remain small, even though we'll be able to load up on assets over time.
Yeah, and I believe I visited you. I think when I was with OSG in Long Island at that office.
Oh, okay.
And that,
Wow.
and that was quite the campus that First Data had there.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't remember that. Yeah, you didn't tell me that when we met again. Then I don't remember you bringing that up.
I want to say it was with you and Matt Nicholas.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when I was at LTI, I went to First Data's office in Jackson. There's somewhere in Florida.
Coral Springs.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, Coral Springs. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt's still there.
Is he?
Yeah,
Well, that's neat. I mean, I think of going from an OSG, which was, I don't know, would they have 150 employees, $20 million company, then to LTI, which was 100 plus employees. Then you go to JDR, which is around 40 employees. There's not that red tape. So if I want to do something, it's like, okay, go do it. Well, who's going to do that? Well,
yeah.
you are. You're the one that brought it up. Go do it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah, but that's fun, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean,
oh no, absolutely. But I got what I asked for, where it's like,
sure.
So no one's gonna stop this
Yeah.
thought of doing it. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I realized when we started this business that I bet historically 30-40% of my time was spent dealing internally on issues that had nothing to do with me winning a customer or keeping a customer that I already won. And yeah. It's a necessary part of large companies. So, you know, I'm not knocking compliance people. Now we work with outside counsel. We know we're licensed where we need to be licensed. We're gonna do it by the book. But when you're the driver of it all and you're paying people outside to deliver for you versus, you know, a team inside that has competing priorities, it's, you know, you especially see it in your world too, in the IT world, is that you know, you don't have to compete for resources because you're making the decisions about where the resources go, and you have just your business, not 5 lines of business inside of a larger company. And the newest and smallest business has to fight against the guys who generate most of the volume and profit. That's like a no-win situation. You can't grow because you can't get help, and you can't get help because you're small. And it takes a real insightful business leader, particularly, or a company with a real digital strategy in these days. And I'm not talking about, let's automate. I'm talking about somebody that's really thinking about where the future is, to see that a business like ours is really the future, and it's worth investing in. Fortunately, we've got an investor and bank supporters that see that, and that's what's exciting for us coming to work.
No, absolutely, yeah. And the whole meeting to prep for a meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what are we doing? We're meeting. We're doing a pre-meeting to the pre-meeting, and I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, we don't do that.
what is? How much time do you have to waste on meetings?
Yeah, but it's just all part of the culture of those companies. And like I said, I've been part of big companies, and I get it. But it's refreshing not to have to deal with it too. And I
remember. I remember a sales opportunity I had with Siemens, and it was somewhere, I think it was Central Jersey. And every time we went in there for a meeting, they would have like this cookie cart with snacks.
Oh yeah.
And people would come in, and it was like my fourth time there trying to sell them to outsource their invoicing. And I'm like, half the people that come in here don't even contribute to this conversation. They're like, oh no, they're here for the snacks.
Yeah.
it's like
yeah.
Come on.
Different time though, wasn't it? Totally
well, and that's the other, I guess, silver lining in the pandemic from a sales process perspective. Back in the day, you get an opportunity, right? What are you doing? You're jumping on a plane and you're going to get in front of that opportunity. So it's a day of travel back, that time there.
Sure.
Now at least you can vet if it's a viable opportunity, not just chasing a name,
right.
Via Zoom. So I think the touches in the sales process, Bob, are going down. However, from an equipment finance perspective, I wanted your perspective on this too. This industry is still a handshake industry. Yeah. But I think instead of doing a 3 to 5 call close, maybe it's a 1 or 2 times you have to be in person. But I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, no, I would agree with you. I think people are so used to working via Zoom or Teams or something that it's perfectly acceptable and it's very efficient. But I don't think there's any substitute for having a relationship with somebody. And I think part of my success in my career, if I've had any, is because I've formed relationships. And I think that's what makes business fun for people. I don't enjoy eating with every single client that I've had over the years, but many of them I do because I like people. And I'd say we'd spend most of our time when we're social, just getting to know people as opposed to talking about business. And I found that particularly interesting when we were doing business in Europe, just the fun of meeting Europeans who want to talk US politics, and, you get interested in their country and their situation and their history. It enriches your life. And if I was just moving contracts around by DocuSign today, I would say I probably wouldn't be doing this, because that wouldn't be fun for me. I much rather know people, make some new friends, and learn from people that are doing things differently than me. And so that's why I keep doing it. So I'm working with a client in Texas right now that I've known for years. And he just called me yesterday, as a matter of fact, said, let's move on. Let's get to the next step here. And we agreed that it was going to be a Teams call, and that we'll get together in Dallas for a steak, when we're ready to sign. And we will sign. But I have to say, my bias was actually to go there because I think I could shortcut the time it takes to get them there by sitting down with them and not doing 5 Teams calls. So,
by the way, you're welcome for dinner, and here's the contract. Let's go.
Okay. No, sign the contract. Yeah, sign the contract first, and then we'll go to dinner. And if you're not going to sign the contract, we'll do the drive-through.
No, I mean, yeah, this is such a relationship industry, and that's why I got in when I was 23, and it sucked me right in. just being around the people, seeing the energy, seeing people that compete with one another. They just lost a deal over a few basis points, yet they're going to go golf or go, still share stories and best practices. I mean, I maybe I'm a little naive to think that other industries might not do that, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
one of the
I don't know.
appeals.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not been in another industry other than teaching, and that's a whole nother world. You don't close on anybody when you're teaching.
No, it's almost a thankless job, unfortunately, but I'll leave that one there. But speaking of like relationships in the industry, I want to say our paths probably crossed at an ELFA event. So I want to take a couple minutes and just talk about, the ELFA and kind of what that trade association has meant to your career.
Oh boy, it's I just can't imagine not being active in the ELFA. Bob, Stubbs, who I mentioned, was my mentor. He's Hall of Fame. He was a former chairman, very active. So I was encouraged early on, as were most of the people at the company, to be involved. So I got involved with what was a marketing and captive committee back in the day.
Okay.
And I guess because of my background, I got on the editorial review board of the Equipment Leasing Journal, which I've been on for 30 years.
You wrote that article, man. You set the stage for it.
Well, I've written two, I think, over 30 years, but I've read every single one as part of the editorial review board. And then I've been on the foundation board twice, and then of course on the board now, an officer, and I think I'm called chair-elect at this point. I'll be the chairperson. I'll be the chairperson in 2023.
Congratulations,
Mike DeCecco. Yeah, DeCecco. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any substitute for, if you want to get something out of it, put something into it, and you're going to make a lot of nice friends. You're going to learn a whole bunch. You're going to get stimulated and inspired by the people that you're around. Everybody's got a story, and most of them are very interesting, whether they're service providers or people you compete with, or people that are just you never compete with, but they're in the same sector as you, just same general industry. So yeah, I can't imagine not being part of it. And I have to say, in some of my former jobs after Bell Atlantic, the companies weren't all that active and didn't encourage it. And I'm encouraging the people on my team now to get more involved because I think it's really worth it. So yeah, I would encourage anybody that comes into this space to get engaged and also help transform it. Back to the idea that I come to work to be inspired. And, I've been around for 30 years. People who are new to the industry have fresh ideas that I'm not going to have because it's not part of my experience. And I think people who get into the association now should get active in ETAC if they're early career people and work to influence the shape of the association and play a role in doing that. And I think there's a place for it. And I'd say, as a board member, as an officer, I like meeting new people. And in fact, we were just discussing how do we find a place for people who really aren't early stage career. They've come from fintech or someplace completely different, but they're joining with us. I don't know that there's a place for those people to plug in and have influence, because ETAC might not be exactly right. And they're not been around long enough to be on a committee or a business council because they're not connected. We need to find ways to connect them.
No, and that's interesting because I always thought of like the emerging talent when I see some of the people that are on there, like they're older than me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's interesting. Maybe I'm like, what is the definition of emerged? Like,
yeah. No, I agree. And in fact, we were just talking about this at the executive committee meeting down in Florida, is that it's not what we think. Everybody's not early stage career. Some people are mid-stage career. So it's not, I don't know that it was ever intended to be an age thing. I think it was intended to be, let's just get more young people involved or younger people involved. And how do we do that? And I think ETAC's been a big hit. And maybe it needs to be defined a little bit more so that somebody who's mid-career and maybe coming from fintech thinks it's a place for them too. I'm not sure how people respond to that, but I would encourage everybody to get engaged somehow.
Yeah, and I think of the different committees I've been on and the service provider, committee. like those people that, I mean, from a sales perspective, right? You have opportunity to network with the people that you're eventually going to be selling to potentially.
Sure. Yeah,
So what a
absolutely.
better way to get around a table and,
Yeah, absolutely. And Jesse, it's a lot of it's about trust too. You work with somebody, somebody, you trust somebody. Now I'm not going to use the word selling. They're telling you about their product and how they can help you in your business. You have a confidant. That's not a salesperson you're talking to. It's somebody that you know. And it's in their best interest to be honest with you and solve real problems. And if you're not a fit, you're not a fit. But you're going to have way more success when you have a relationship. Yeah.
It's 100%. 100%. And then if it's not a good opportunity, you trust in that person to say, hey, this isn't going to work. Because just because it's not an opportunity today doesn't mean it can't be something in the future.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, the ELFA, like, don't just be a member. Like, reach out to Bob, reach out to other members of the board, ask how you can get involved. I always make the mistake of asking Amy, if you need me for anything, don't hesitate to ask. She calls me on it,
yes.
which is great.
Of course it is. Yeah. And it's great that we have people like you that want to be involved, because it's the strength of the association is really the strength of the people that are participating in. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the convention this year. I think it's not it's on the East Coast, which is nice for us people on the East Coast. But I think people are so done with not moving about and hanging out with people that it's going to be very, very well attended. I know at the meeting this week, we talked about the early registrations through the roof. I think,
the hotel's sold out, right?
Yeah. Already? And well, they have a secondary one, and I'm not sure that one might even be sold out. I'm not sure. But I think people want to, I've been going to events in the payment space, and they're all oversubscribed, highest attendance in years, and not just people showing up, people wanting to rekindle relationships and do business. Yeah, so it's been a really good year from that point of view for us. So,
well, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's a little earlier in October than
it is. Yeah, it's usually around the 20th or so. Yeah, it always got in the way of my college reunion, which I haven't been to in years. Maybe I'll go this year.
What college is that?
I went to a small school outside of Chicago called North Central College for my undergraduate work, and then I did graduate school at Loyola in Chicago, where I ended up staying and teaching for a year.
That's good. Is that Loyola always has a good basketball program, don't they?
Well, in the past few years they did. Yeah, they were groundbreaking in 1963 by fielding, I'm not sure if it was an all African American team or 4 of 5. And they won the NCAA championship that year. But in the last few years, they've been, Sweet 16 a couple of times. So they didn't have a basketball team when I was there. I wasn't interested in basketball when I was there. I was quite the studious person back in those days.
So I asked everyone who comes on here, Bob, to give a little fun fact about themselves. On the fact that you were a teacher. I didn't know that. I learned that.
Yeah, well, most people don't. Well, if you were around me a lot, I think my calling was to be a teacher. Okay. And I got kind of, I taught for 1 year at Loyola University, and most of the kids who a lot of kids in the school wanted to go to med schools. That's why they were at the school. They have a medical school, and I was teaching fiction. And so I have a love of books and old books. I suppose that's the fun fact about me: history and literature, mostly the novel. And so that's what I spent my time studying, and spent many years going to school, and got hooked in the leasing business kind of by a fluke. And there are days when I thought, gee, I was really born to be a teacher, but somehow I got into the equipment financing business. So that's probably the fun fact. You'd probably be getting mini lectures from me on all kinds of subjects of interest, to me at least, if you were around me a lot. And you'd say, what's with this guy? And somebody'd say, I used to be a teacher.
It's hard to have an entrepreneurial, spirit, though, I would think, being a teacher.
Actually, it's hard to describe what it's like to teach in a university. It's a little bit unrealistic in some ways because it's a world unto itself. You know, it's a world of it's a world of ideas. But the ideas, particularly if you you know, you believe what I believe about the power of words and literature, it's life enriching in a very big way, bigger than most people know. And well, I don't know about most people know, but you know, as a teacher, that was my job. I always thought if people leave here and they read a book when they're 40 years old, I will have accomplished my goal, because it's not about mastering, you know, 5 or 10 books in a semester. It's learning to read books that are challenging, and they're challenging because they're full of ideas that are complex. So your life will be richer if you learn to do that and you keep it up. I never taught the same books. I always read new books, so it was a fresh experience for me with students. And so there's nobody telling you what to do in your classroom. You find out a way to affect the people that are sitting in front of you, and it takes as much creative work as it does to do leasing. Actually, it's a lot harder than doing leasing, to tell you the truth.
So if you had to recommend a book for me to check out.
Do you read fiction or nonfiction, or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter. I've been listening to a lot of leadership books actually recently.
Okay. Well,
so when I'm driving my son, which is like an hour trip back and forth to school, or like walking the dog, so I listen to a lot of books on tape.
Okay. Well, I would suggest, I don't know about reading versus listening. Hold on, I'm just looking up another book. But I would recommend for a piece of fiction, The Gentleman from Moscow.
Gentleman from Moscow. Okay.
And a book called for a nonfiction, a book called The Splendid and the Vile, which is about Churchill with contrasting chapters about Hitler. Okay. And The Gentleman from Moscow is a very well written book, very interesting. But I'm not sure what it's like listening to it versus having to read it. So you tell me if you do it.
Will do. No, I mean those would be next. I think what lately I was Atomic Habits. I just finished that one, and The Servant. Just a lot of different things when you know, have some extra time or just driving.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, because you know, statistically, something like 40% of college graduates don't read a book after they graduate.
That's alarming.
Yeah.
How do you grow if you have no input?
They don't. Hence the problems we have in our country.
That's fair. That's fair. So I guess just in closing, Bob, you know, at the end of the day, why do business with Spinova Capital?
Oh, I think Finova Capital cares about your customer experience and journey. We built everything into our workflow and products to make serving the underserved, which a lot of small businesses are, a good experience. I said, as I mentioned before, we customize what we do. So if you're a match for us and everybody's not, you're going to get a solution to the problem that you really have, as opposed to some generic offering that your salespeople struggle with, or your customers don't accept, or you don't promote. It takes us some time working with the client to get to the place where, when we're done, if we don't have a successful referral program, it's because we made a mistake someplace in all the conversations that we had, because it should be meeting a need you have and be measurable. So for example, just that I only take a minute, because I know my kids say, Dad, you talk to a corpse. Is that you know, we have customers in the payment space that give away equipment. They think they can make enough money on the card processing side that give the equipment away. Well, if you're a sizable customer of mine, you could be giving away $3 to $4 million a year worth of equipment. And you know, and I'm out here doing missionary work, telling somebody, you might think you're creating enterprise value, and I'm sure you are, but you might be able to at least cover your cost of goods by offering a financing option to your customers that's way affordable. If your solution is so good that they're taking it, you know, a nominal payment, you know, on a $3,000 asset is so nominal that you should be not starting in a hole with every relationship because you've given away your cost of goods. So that's why Finova, we care enough to spend the time to build a program that is going to meet some specific need you have, and we can measure whether or not we meet it.
Well, excellent, Bob. I mean, that's the same page there. And if you have that business conversation with someone where it's like, hey, look, I'm just trying to cover my costs, who's going to say no? Who's going to say no to that? And if they say no, maybe that's not a good business relationship.
I worked for a guy once who said, when our salespeople complained every time we made a change that the market wasn't going to accept it, he said, and this is a quote, "The reluctance is in the asking," unquote. You haven't even asked yet, and you're telling me the market won't accept it. Go out to the market and sell it, because they'll accept it. They'll accept it. You just don't want to do the work. And, you know, as somebody who's sold, talking to somebody who sells, you don't like to hear that, but there's some truth in that.
No, I was spot on, because you avoid potential conflict and it's out of your comfort zone. So it's like, why would I do that?
Yeah. So you'd rather tell the company not to offer it than you would try to convince a customer to take it. So every time I quote that guy, and I quote him frequently, when a customer of mine says, "Well, I don't think we can do that," I say, "Hey, the reluctance is in the asking. Tell your salespeople to go out and try it, because we can modify it. We can modify the message. We can tweak the program. But if you never even try, then, you know, your sales guy's basically running the show here."
Yeah.
And the reluctance is truly in the asking. So.
All right, sir. Well, I appreciate your time today, Bob, and look forward to what do we got? Probably see you. I'm going to see if I can get you to come to this event we have outside of Philly in September.
Yeah. When is it?
Tuesday, September 20th.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I got a daughter down that way. I could go visit. I'll see if I can make it. And I appreciate the chance to talk with you, Jesse. Thanks so much.
Nope. Look forward to seeing you maybe in Pennsylvania, if not in Marco Island come October.
Marco Island, yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Have a good day.
Thank you, Jesse. You too. Bye-bye.